Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And on the line with us is Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon, one of the finest progressive Democrats in the United States Senate. Senator Merkley, welcome back.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with you, Tom.
Great having you with us. By the way, people can find your website at merkley.senate.gov, and they can tweet you at SenJeffMerkley, SenJeffMerkley. So Donald Trump is talking about Buy America, and there's this new GAO report on trade. You want to tell us about this?
Oh, sure. You bet. Trump has said repeatedly that his guiding principle is going to be Buy American and Hire American. Up till now, his actions are not living up to his words. His companies are continuing to outsource their manufacturing. He's continuing to import foreign labor for his resorts. When he had the chance to weigh in with House Republicans on Buy America for a water infrastructure bill, he was quiet. And certainly he made the big promise on American steel, that American steel would be used for Keystone and Dakota Access, and then he broke that promise within days. So it's been one failure after another on Buy American. But this particular GAO report is one that Senator Baldwin and I requested several years ago. We got the report recently, and this is about another framing for Buy America, which is us opening up our government contracts to foreign contractors and foreign governments opening up their contracts to American contractors. And we wanted to know, is this a fair trade? And the answer, in short, is it is absolutely not a fair trade. The foreign governments are not opening their contracts to the American contractors, and we're getting maybe 50 cents on the dollar in terms of what we give out versus what we get.
When was this passed?
So this goes back quite a few years. It's a waiver ability under the trade agreements that set up the WTO and the framework for that, and then going forward. And so this is the president. In other words, the law is still pretty much the same, going back many decades, but the waiver exists for the president to say we can waive this Buy America provision if we have a trade agreement. Right. And for the U.S. And so our presidents have been continuously, one after another, saying, okay, we'll waive this. And our argument here, the argument that Tammy Baldwin and I are making, is look, it's here. This is a power that's completely in your hands. You don't have to keep giving out these waivers when the foreign governments are not living up their end of the deal.
Right. Now, I read a piece some years ago that really stuck with me, and maybe I've got this wrong, and maybe I've got a hold of a corner of the whole here that you're talking about. But tell me your thoughts on this, and if this is connected to reality. My understanding is that in 1935 or thereabouts, within a year of that, FDR passed through Congress an act, it's called the Buy America Act, which is still on the books. 1933, thank you. And the Buy America Act says that if the federal government is buying anything, it has to be sourced from an American source, and it can only be bought from a non-American source if it's simply not available in the United States. And that the only exception to that is that the White House can issue waivers for this. And that this was pretty much the law of the land, and it was honored by presidents right up until the 1980s. And that when Reagan came into office, he started issuing waivers like they were confetti. And the result of that was that our government purchasing power, which had been directed to U.S. manufacturing, started getting directed to overseas manufacturing, and is largely directed there now, outside of perhaps military hardware. And I mean, everybody. You walk through government offices, it's amazing. You see computers made in China, and it's like, whoa, what's wrong with this picture? And that no president since Reagan has stopped issuing those waivers. Am I talking about the same thing you're talking about, or is this something else?
This is absolutely right. In fact, it was the 1979 Trade Agreements Act that set the stage for the president to issue these waivers. And as you point out, it's Reagan who took that power and started issuing them. And we've been getting the short end of this deal ever since. Right.
So, so any president could simply say, I'm just not going to issue these waivers anymore.
That's right. Exactly.
Which would create demand for American manufactured goods, would it not?
Well, yes, it certainly would, because we're talking about a sizable amount of purchases that are in the government
Probably $1
sector.
trillion a year, or something like that. I mean, it's a big chunk of change.
It's a big chunk, and this has really gone unexamined for a long period of time. So here we have a president who campaigned on Buy American, and has failed to come through on point after point after point since he took office. But this is something within his reach, that he could absolutely use this. He could shut down these waivers and then say, hey, you want this waiver, you've got to open up your procurement to American companies. And until and unless that is done, these waivers shouldn't be issued.
So our goal here is to assert moral suasion against or upon Donald Trump, to suggest to him, hey, if you want to be popular, if you want to do what you promised, here's a simple way. You just issue an executive order saying no more waivers, of the Buy America Act.
Well, he keeps looking for excuses on various things. On the Keystone Pipeline, he said, "Oh, absolutely, it's going to be built with American steel." He was 100% clear.
Right. No, it's Russian and Chinese steel, isn't it?
Yeah, and then he said, "Oh, you know what? They've already bought some of this steel, and well, we'll look to maybe future pipelines."
Right.
And backed away from this. But there's no excuse for backing away from this. This is completely within his power. If he wants to exercise leverage, assign a team to work with these foreign governments to open up their process. They don't open it up, they don't get the waiver.
We're talking with Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon. Merkley.senate.gov. You can tweet him at @SendJeffMerkley. Senator Merkley, the last question here. What can people who are listening to this conversation and want to support your efforts, what can they do? How do they do it? Who do they call? Who do they email? What site do they go to, et cetera?
I think it's most effective for them to weigh in with their House and Senate members and say, hey, it's outrageous that we open up our government contracts to foreign countries that are not reciprocating. We're getting ripped off. It's been decade after decade. It's time to stop. Please weigh in with the president to use his waiver power to make sure that the United States no longer gets the short end of this deal.
Would a briefer form of that be to call and say, please stop the executive branch waivers of the Buy America Act of 1933?
Yes, the Buy American Act, you bet, of 1933, yes.
Buy American Act, yeah. Okay, so okay, we'll get on that. The number for Congress is 202-225-3121, and you give me your zip code if you don't know who represents you in the House of Representatives. Odds are, whatever state you're in, you know who your two senators are, and so that's 3 phone calls. Senator Jeff Merkley, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Tom.
It is always great talking to you. You are such a great senator and a great motivator and activist. Thank you. We'll be back. We'll be back with your calls right after this.